Good afternoon. That was great. Another round of applause for Philip. We are meant for more. This is a sentiment that's almost universally accepted. Every human has dignity. Every person's goal is a life well lived. And as humans, we're wired for connectivity and creativity and work and ultimately purpose. Unfortunately, or hopefully, our policies would actually reflect that. They would recognize and respect human dignity. They would remove barriers to work and worth. And they would make it easy for all of us to contribute to society. Unfortunately, I think we know that's not the way our policies are designed right now. Right now, here in Mississippi, and the same in my home state of Louisiana, fewer than 60% of our able-bodied adults who could be working are actually in the workforce. That leaves 40% of people in the shadows and left behind. At the same time, every employer you talk to says, I'm desperate for workers. I need employees. So why does this happen? Where is the disconnect? It should be simple, right? When you have people not working and you have people who need to hire people, they should come together. It should be simple. Well, it's not. This is our government's solution. This is the collection of programs that purport to wage war on poverty in America. The reality is it's a broad collection of disconnected programs that are not very well measured, remarkably ineffective and inefficient toward driving to outcomes. And if you're a recipient of benefits, you may have to go to 10, 15, 20 different offices, deal with a variety of different eligibility checks and case managers, and it is a massive undertaking just to navigate the system for something that's supposed to help you get back up on your feet. Further, we make it even more challenging because these safety net programs, while well-intentioned, we think, create disincentives for the most important things for people to get out of poverty. This is created by our friends at the Georgia Center for Opportunity, who have modeled something we call the benefits cliff. And if you look at this if you can see it, this models a single mom here in Mississippi with an 8-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy. And you can see where she marginally makes slightly more money and the benefits fall off. The same thing is true for family formation if she marries the father of one of the children or marries at all. And so we have countless stories of people leaving work on Friday in tears of joy because of a promotion or raise they've just been offered, and then coming back on Monday morning in tears of despair because they've realized if they accept that raise or promotion, they're going to lose more in their benefits than they gain from work. And if anyone here studied the success sequence from the Brookings Institution, we know that people who graduate high school, get a job, and form a family before having children, only 2% of those individuals end up in poverty, no matter where you started. And yet 2 of those things, work and family formation, we disincentivize in our safety net programs. So it's a mess, and the results have been disastrous. We talked a little bit about workforce participation earlier. You can see both my state of Louisiana and yours of Mississippi are well below the national average, and the national average is low. The same is true with poverty rates in our states. Far too many people, far too many families living in poverty. And this heartbreaking idea that we measure in youth disconnectedness. What this means are 16 to 25-year-olds who are neither in school nor working. 15% in both of our states. These are the kids who get caught by substance abuse. These are the kids who get caught by lives of crime because they're lost, they're disconnected. in large part because of unintended consequences of the safety nets. There's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better way to help people out of poverty and help them into a life of self-sufficiency. That was the motivating idea. My colleagues and I founded an organization, a project called the Alliance for Opportunity. This is a collaborative project between the Pelican Institute that I run in Louisiana, the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and the Georgia Center for Opportunity. And I'm so excited that we have now been able to expand this work to other states, including a partnership right here in Mississippi with Empower Mississippi, our host, doing amazing work in this space. We set out with the Alliance to do three primary areas of work. The first, fix the safety nets. Simple, right? Unfortunately not. This takes both change at the federal and state level and a massive lift to get this done. But if we're ever to really solve this, we really must tackle things like the benefits cliffs, things like the disconnectedness of all of our programs. Second, we want to expand opportunities to work. This involves things like eliminating onerous occupational licensure rules that punish people who are trying to work. It also means creating more pathways to work and opportunity in our K through 12 and community college system. And then, of course, we aim to address poverty through the justice system. You've heard about that some already today. If we can smooth pathways to reentry and help people who've been formerly incarcerated or involved in the justice system find work, reintegrate with community and family, we can demonstrably lower our crime rate and move people out of that poverty and dependency. We like to study what's working in our state and other states. And one of the things, again, you've heard me talk about it a couple of times, workforce participation. This is something we look at a lot. And as we began to study what happened after the COVID economic lockdowns, we were trying to better understand which states were succeeding and which states were failing to help get workforce people back to work. We had among the largest number of first-time recipients of social safety net programs during the pandemic since the New Deal. And what we have seen, we have felt it, is here in Mississippi and in my state of Louisiana, we have struggled to even get back to our meager baseline before the pandemic. But every data point we studied, every way we looked at this, there was an outlier. And that outlier was Utah. They had the highest workforce participation rate in the country. They were the first and for a long time only state to have recovered back to their pre-COVID workforce rate. And in fact, not only did they recover, they actually began to exceed their pre-COVID projections. They did better post-pandemic than pre-pandemic. And this is after, again, so many new people entering the safety net and getting the risk of being trapped in that system like we've seen before. And so there was one other place where Utah is an outlier, and we figured there was a correlation there. And that's the way they treat safety nets. Utah is the first and only, we'll get to that in a minute, state in the country to have consolidated their safety net and workforce programs. In the 1990s, or the late 1900s for the young folks in the crowd, they came together to say, we have got to do things differently. We've got to bring these things together. And so in Utah, no matter what your entry point is into the safety net, whether it's Medicaid, temporary cash assistance, whether it is WIOA, the Workforce Opportunity Act, which we'll get to in a minute, or SNAP, food stamps, whatever it is, childcare, housing assistance, you have one case manager who treats you as a whole person, instead of dozens of case managers who just exist to hand you a check. And they see safety net programs as work support. They measure their case managers on whether the people who come through the program end up in better jobs at the end. This is a common sense for those of us in this room, I would suspect, but nonetheless revolutionary way to look at the government programs of temporary assistance. We have begun to call this effort One Door, I want to talk about it in a minute, but first show you a brief video that introduces some of the concepts.
How do you create opportunities to help someone move from poverty to thriving? Social safety net programs can be vital in helping those in poverty survive. Work helps people break out of poverty. But if they have no way to get out of the safety net and into work, individuals and families can stay trapped in poverty for generations.
And that's exactly what's happening right now in Louisiana.
We have multiple disconnected safety net programs, multiple disconnected eligibility requirements, and multiple disconnected caseworkers. And our workforce program is completely disconnected from our safety net. We need a better system. We need one door. The one door policy gives people a single integrated welfare and workforce program. In this model, welfare becomes work support. Eligibility and casework are streamlined, and people have a clear path to get the help they need while receiving education and support to find employment. This model has been working in Utah since 1997, but right now, federal laws prevent states from integrating their systems like Utah did.
It's time for Louisiana to take the lead on safety net reform, and we need Congress to open the one door option so that we can give our fellow citizens one door out of poverty and into opportunity.
So not only, of course, Louisiana, but Mississippi and other states as well. Now, you heard the call at the end of that we need Congress to open up this opportunity. Well, the reason why is in its enduring wisdom. The Congress in 1999 passed a bill, new program that we now call the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA for our alphabet soup acronym friends. And amazingly, in this program, it's about a $10 or $15 billion program aimed at workforce. But it includes a prohibition and makes it illegal for states to consolidate workforce and safety net programs. They must be kept separate, which is really stunning. And I have yet to have anyone explain to me satisfactorily why this has been the case, but it is. So this effort has two prongs. The first is tackle the federal issue. Now, here's the good news. The Congress has to reauthorize the WIOA program. So we began working about a year and a half ago with several members of Congress to introduce a measure we call the One Door to Work and Opportunity Act that would remove this prohibition. Common sense. Now, common sense and Congress don't often end up in the same sentence with one another. And so, of course, they have taken this idea, and instead of removing the prohibition altogether, what has made its way into the text of the WIOA reauthorization is what we call demonstration authority, and the opportunity for 5 or 6 states to apply for a waiver based on certain criteria. The good news is both Mississippi and Louisiana qualify. And the other good news is this has already passed the House of Representatives. It, perhaps not surprisingly to the folks in this room, got held up briefly in the Senate committee chaired by our friend Bernie Sanders. But now, over the election cycle, actually, there was negotiation and there has become agreement to move this. The question remains, will the lame duck Congress be able to vote on this, or will we have to wait for the next Congress? We've been in touch with our home state representative and my friend, Speaker Mike Johnson, and we're hopeful that this will get on the agenda for the lame duck. If not, we're still very optimistic this moves in the next Congress. So, with the federal law on the cusp of changing, that leads us to states. So how do we fix this? How do we take this idea that has worked so marvelously well in Utah and has worked not only in the short term, but over now almost 30 years, to move people through the system when they need help and get them out the other side for work, and reduced significantly the welfare rolls and streamline their government? So first, they did this in Utah. We've done this in Louisiana. First is audits, and some of these can be done concurrently, I should say. But what we realize as we get into this is there's not great access to data. We don't know a lot of the information. So we worked with our legislature and the legislative auditor to they conducted performance and efficiency audits of the major welfare programs in Louisiana. And then ultimately, that led to an audit of the entire program comprehensively. As you can imagine, the results were not good. I'll share a couple of them that were most stunning to me. One, in the WIOA, the workforce program, 80% of the dollars spent in Louisiana went to overhead, rather than actually helping develop and train a workforce. Perhaps even more shocking and worse, and I actually had to call the auditor back to make sure I was reading this right, they found that more than half of the individuals, of the Louisiana citizens who took advantage of programs offered by, I guess, the remaining 20% of the WIOA dollars, more than half of them completed their program and made less money after that than they had made before going into it. So this is ostensibly a workforce program to help train people for the workforce and connect employers to workers that has failed pretty dramatically. So these audits led us to the opportunity to educate lawmakers, to educate the administrators of these programs, to educate the public, and in our case, to educate a newly elected governor who had been elected on a reform agenda. And the good news is the education worked. People began to see the problem, and this was bipartisan. Our lead authors in the Louisiana legislature include an urban Democrat in the House, a rural Republican from the Senate, and a moderate Republican from the House. This has bipartisan, cross-partisan appeal because everyone ultimately wants the same goal: to help people move from dependency to self-sufficiency. And if these programs are going to exist, they ought not fail. They ought to succeed at that. So the next step for us was the governor appointed a task force. He took the agency heads that he had just appointed to all of the agencies that have some touch on these programs, and it's about 8 or 10. They're dispersed across a variety of different agencies. And he said, we're working on getting the federal law changed. In the meantime, I need y'all to figure out how we're going to implement One Door once we're allowed to. And so we've been working alongside the task force over the last year, which has also included the local workforce leaders, business leaders, legislators, and our plan will be due at the end of January to lay out exactly the roadmap that will get to the last step, which is implementation. And although this is a relatively simple idea, I can tell you it's a relatively complex thing to implement. So far in Louisiana, we've counted about 20 different data systems, eligibility systems that are going to have to be merged into one. This takes retraining case managers, realigning departments, and we all know how quickly government tends to move. And so this is a big undertaking, but one that we're committed to, that the governor is committed to, and will be an opportunity to transform the way we think about and look at poverty, to transform the way we look at and think about work. And we talked at the beginning, the meaning, the deep meaning and opportunity for work. And you heard it even some from Philip. This is more than just a material benefit we provide to someone, but the life change and the culture change we begin to see with meaningful work has an impact on every policy area we care about. Crime, education, taxes, jobs, you name it, this has an impact. So I'm excited that Mississippi has joined us. We're also working in West Virginia and Arkansas and several other states. We have an opportunity right now, and it's a window of opportunity given the forthcoming change in the federal law, and it's an urgent need as we see and feel and talk to the individuals who are struggling under the current system, who are left behind, who are unable to make ends meet and unable to even accept new work and new opportunities. So I invite you, invite your legislature, your leaders to join in this opportunity. And here's what the opportunity is. We can actually make a dent in poverty. We can free millions of our fellow Americans, our fellow Mississippians, our fellow Louisianians from the chains of dependency of these failed government programs and help them find lives of meaning, of self-sufficiency, of human dignity. And so I invite you to join because I'll end where I started. At the end of the day, human beings are wired for community, for creativity, for work, and for purpose. And at the end of the day, we are meant for more. Thank you very much.